Good afternoon. It's so nice to see everybody today. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us at the forum at Columbus Metro Club. I'm Sophia Pfiffner. I'm the president and CEO of the Columbus Metro Club. And for those of you who are joining us on live stream, thank you so much for being part of today's conversation. We're so thankful that you're with us here in Italian Village in the heart of Columbus and this historic community. Thank you so much for today's sponsors, Downtown Columbus Incorporated, the Edwards Company, Marker Construction, and MKSK. Thank you to our presenting sponsors for our live stream, the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation, and our live stream partner, the Columbus Dispatch. And we are so grateful to the Ellis for hosting every single CMC forum. It takes a complete village, and we want to thank all of our sponsors with a round of applause. So thank you so much to all of them. All right, friends, downtown Columbus is in the middle of a dramatic transformation. Some of its tallest towers, once buzzing with office workers, are being reborn as a place to not only live, but to gather and to connect. From the newly rebranded Preston Centre to the Chase and Continental Towers, developers and civic leaders are betting big on a new kind of urban core. But will these bold conversations and conversions be big enough to meet the city's ambitious goal of 40,000 residents and 120,000 workers by 2040? As remote work habits evolve and new housing takes shape, the big question isn't whether downtown is changing. The big question is, what is it changing into? So today's conversation brings together great leaders helping to shape the future. Welcome to today's forum, a downtown that works and lives. Please give a huge CMC welcome, and I want it to be huge, to our panelists. First, Greg Davies, CEO of Downtown Columbus, Inc. Brad DeHaze, founder and president of Connect Real Estate and Connect Construction. Mindy Justice, Advocacy Chair for the Downtown Residents Association of Columbus. And Michael Stevens, the Director of Development for the City of Columbus. All right, so every conversation is not complete without a moderator of discourse. And we believe how important our local journalists and local news matters. So we are very excited to host, returning again to CMC, Ronnie Dunnigan, evening manager, editor, and anchor for ABC6. Thank you so much, Ronnie. The stage is yours.
And thank you for having me. It's always a great conversation. Love these. Got a very important question for you guys before we kick this thing off. How many of you love your vehicles? Raise your hand if you love your vehicle. At least you appreciate it, getting from point A to point B. Well, as a journalist, I'm going to help you out. Anybody that is parked in the Wonder Bread parking lot, I advise you to run outside and move your car, because you should not be parked there. It will be towed. So if you're parked in the Wonder Bread parking lot, please move your vehicle. So very important. Now that we got that very important housekeeping note out of the way, thanks to our great panel here, we're going to have some great questions. This is always a laid-back conversation, so we really enjoy it. The first question, this is literally for everybody on the panel, just to kind of get you guys warmed up here. Downtown Columbus is clearly changing, but the big question is into exactly what? How would each of you define the new identity that is emerging of downtown Columbus?
First of all, I think I need somebody to move my car.
No.
But thank you. I don't know that it's new. I think, you know, when I took over and want to start off, I got the best team of any job I could have. And Amy Taylor is kind of the heart and soul of our organization, does a great job. She was there when I got there, and we've been doing this together. And when we came, it was 21, so it was COVID. And so there was really no downtown, and we had very little to do. So we just started running and figuring out what's going to happen. And then before COVID, I think downtown was on the precipice of really becoming something special. There was a lot of great work done. It was almost there, and then COVID was really, really difficult for everybody. So we're just still trying to recover from that. But we've done such a great job of activating downtown. There's now 13,000 residents downtown. You know, in 2000, I believe there were 3,000. So just that in such a short period of time has been great. And what we've really focused on is live, work, play. And I think if you're going to talk about anything new, it would be that. Old downtown was drive in, work, drive out. New downtown is live, eat, play, go to work, do all kinds of great things that we have now. So if anything, I think it's more just a holistic, trying to get everything in one place so that you have a reason to live downtown, you have a reason to work downtown, you have a reason to stay downtown.
So I started developing downtown before COVID. So it's one of those situations to where you feel like you're really high. And then who would have thought we'd remove humans? And we own parking, we own apartments, we own office and retail. And I think right now, if we're talking about where we're at in the cycle, we went from kind of close to the top of the cycle in 2019 to a rapid fall to the bottom. And I think now we're seeing a longer cycle start to take place. And these public infrastructure projects, that's the difference of downtown versus other like ancillary markets. Where else can you put a $100 million project right in the middle of downtown? And if we look at where the big, changes came downtown, it was, Scioto Greenways, Columbus Commons, and now I think this Capitol Line project is the absolute game changer. So I think it's dynamic. That's the word I would use. And I mean, we're excited, we're bullish. We feel like we've been through the downtrodden bottoms to where, honestly, I don't know how we survived. It was kind of, I think a lot of us in this room kind of just, looped our arms together and kind of dredged through the mud. But now we feel like we're on the other side, and it's a good spot to be.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I would say from a what does it feel like, how is it evolving? I will say downtown looks and feels a lot like me. I am indicative of kind of an average resident. I am divorced. I'm in my early 40s. I choose to be car free. And I have some privileges in life that allow me to have some financial stability and make some of these decisions. So a lot of that is what is the fabric of a downtown resident. It isn't the only type of downtown resident we want to see, but it's pretty indicative, I think, of the nation right now that so many downtowns are seeing an influx of people that choose to live there, even though the market rate's a little bit higher because it's the hot spot to be. What I will say, and sort of shameless plug for Downtown Residents Association, I see my board members in the room. We are, as an association of about 300, 400 people, and we also have business members. And I think it's important because we used to be known as the old people who own property downtown. I had a lot of people tell me that. And the reality is we have a lovely boomer owner population that is the very fabric of our community, and we cherish it. We also have a lot of millennial choice renters, a lot of millennial choice owners. Our board itself is made up of pretty 50-50 mix of owners and renters. A lot of folks who are in one-car households, if they have 2 or 3 people, or in, like my case, no-car household with just me. So there are a lot of evolutions and changes. There'll be more to come, but yeah, how is downtown right now? It looks like me.
I see downtown now and the trend. It's a downtown that works for more people at more times of the day, and it is one that is, in more ways than ever before, downtown's working. So I'm really excited about the trend and the trajectory of downtown.
Okay. Greg, I'll hit you with this question. This is kind of the big question that everybody wants to know. Where do we stand towards the 2040 goals of 40,000 residents and 120,000 workers and 10 million annual visitors to downtown Columbus? Are we on track?
I certainly hope we're on track. I think we are. As I mentioned, we have 13,000. We have a bunch in the pipeline, too, of all kinds of mix, from affordable to market rate to lots of new places coming online. So very excited about that. In terms of workers, I believe in 2025 we've had 89,000, which is 12% year over last year, which is great. Not quite there. I think they're averaging about 3 days per week. There still are some folks who are off Mondays or Fridays or whichever day they choose to work from home. And I believe we had 5.3 million visitors, so working really hard on that. I serve on, well, I'm sorry, I just stepped off the Experience Columbus board, but I know Brian Ross and his team doing an outstanding job of bringing people. And I think downtown is going to play an integral part to getting people to come visit. I think that when you look at the peninsula and what we've done there with the Junto Hotel that Rockridge built, that's a hotel when you're traveling and you go on vacation, that's a place you want to go. And we're trying to provide the amenities there and around there and to work with everything else that's there, from our office building with Daimler and all of the apartments that we're building with Flaherty & Collins. So very excited. I think we are on track. I think there's a lot of work to do. I don't think I'll be around in 2040, so you're going to have to hold somebody else accountable. But I do feel good that we're making all the correct strides.
Sounds good. Brad, I'll ask you this one. What's driving developer and investor confidence in downtown Columbus?
So I think, when you talk about larger projects, developer confidence is always there in a market. We're always kind of bullish, good or bad. But with regards to investment, that's what really drives our projects. With downtown's differentiator, I've never heard anyone say, "I'm going to move to this city because of that sweet suburb," and it's like a byproduct, of a successful, healthy environment. It's great, and we love the suburbs, and some people choose to, have their kids go to school in the suburbs, and it's a healthy development area. But when you're talking about dense, urban, a lot of activity, the hardest thing to get is residential demand. For someone to say, "I want to live in a market," that is the most difficult, critical mass to get. And I think we started to have that with, Scioto Greenways, the Columbus Commons. Now what we're getting with the Capitol Line project is that gives us something to point to. And if we talk about, these big projects, the peninsula never would have happened. Daimler's building the peninsula, which is phenomenal. Obviously we put people up at the Junto every time they come in town, and we get, investors, big investors come to town, absolutely love it. It never would have happened if it wasn't for the Greenways project. So I think what we look at is, where are we at and where are we going? And anytime you say something about population boom, that's in, thousands of a percent, or it's really ridiculous from where we're at to where we're talking about. And even if we fall short, what that does to real estate, what that does to residential, what that does to, things like parking, things like retail, those are massive shifts, and it's very difficult to create that type of critical mass in one area. And I think we now have the infrastructure, once that Capitol Line project is fully up and running, to really support it. I think it's a huge magnet. I think it's going to be a driver for Columbus and the state. We're really excited.
And Mindy, this one is for you. As a downtowner, what works well and what's still missing in the area?
Well, I will say that what works well for me isn't what works well for everybody, so it is the perfect neighborhood for me. I moved in 2019. I don't see myself ever not living either in the actual downtown or immediate vicinity. But that doesn't mean that that's for everybody. Some people love the suburbs, some people love outer suburbs, and I just think it's important that we respect that Columbus is at a time, though, where we focus on residential. We're doing this now, but I just want to emphasize we are the most important neighborhood in the most important city in the economic driver of our state, and it's important that we continue to make the investments we are. That's why all this is such a wonderful, fruitful conversation. So what could be done better? What is going great? All those macro, big picture investments are occurring, and that is nothing to sneeze at. The fact that the river was completely redone, we know what's to follow when those investments come, but that doesn't mean it's easy to get those investments done. Everything that's happening that has already been discussed is so important. It is critical, though, that we continue to keep our eye on the prize. My poor friend Justin Goodwin loves getting a side text from me about scooters, because I will say, why was the scooter slowed down after 10 p.m.? We just heard CODA mention that they have double-digit growth now that their midnight 1 a.m. service is going so well. Why are we slowing down scooters when we don't slow down cars to right-size that for the mobility option in a 2-mile wide downtown? So there are some nuanced policy moves that we can make to adjust over time. The macro is there, and it's on a trajectory. But what could be done better is we need to continue to keep our eye on the prize. and focus in on the little bits and pieces that truly make it a livable neighborhood. Like I said, it's a wide downtown. You could fit the downtown of Cleveland and Cincinnati inside the downtown of Columbus. So separate from whether we're tall or not, we're just geographically wide. And so we need to make sure we have the right mobility solutions and entirety of neighborhood to encapsulate that in a right way.
All right, Greg and Mike, this next question is for you guys. We've heard time and time again Columbus is on the cusp of an affordable housing crisis. How is affordability being factored into the blueprint for downtown's growth?
I'll start and talk a little bit about the city's strategy around housing and the impact on downtown, and then Greg, the great work that you and your team is doing to make sure housing gets built. I'll let you cover that. So the mayor talks about this and has made it clear we need more housing in our region. The number that we've identified is 200,000 new units in the next 10 years. From the City of Columbus perspective, our elected leadership has said we're going to build 100,000 of that. We'll take care of half of that. And we need housing that's available for everybody across the continuum. So we need to make sure we have market rate housing. We need to make sure we have permanent supportive housing being built. I think downtown needs to capture that full continuum of housing. Everybody who wants to live downtown, who has access to the jobs downtown, should be able to do that. So we continue to use the tools that are in place to encourage investment in housing. One of the biggest tools we have is to get more units built is our affordable housing bonds. So voters twice now have authorized a bond initiative, so the total now is up to $250 million in affordable housing bonds. And we are deploying that across the city and in downtown. I look out my office on the City Hall campus, and I see the former YMCA building that is being repurposed and redeveloped by the Woda Cooper companies. That is going to be an affordable unit. When I say affordable, what does that mean? That means people making anywhere from $40,000 to $80,000, depending on the size of their family, are going to have, they will qualify to be able to rent units in that building. So that's really important. It's not all market rate work that's being developed there. And the way we're able to do that is because we've got partners like the Downtown Columbus Inc., who is leading on making sure we are acquiring the properties and working with the partners to get that redeveloped. And I'll let Greg talk a little bit about some of the success they've had and what they've got planned.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, when you think about downtown, and for those of us that have been here for a while, when we didn't have a lot of people living downtown, there was Miranova, Waterford, then Parks Edge. That was all pretty expensive stuff. And when I took over with Amy and the team, Mayor Ginther was very clear that he wanted downtown to be for all. And our organization had never done any housing, never worked on anything like that, but we bought some land over by Topiary Park, and we built 100 units, Topiary Crossing, and it's beautiful. If you've ever seen it, you would not know that it was that affordable. And very proud of that, very proud of that. And so there's 98 units there. We're looking at potentially acquiring additional land to build more. There's also 500 units that'll be coming online between the Y, which the director mentioned that we've worked with Woda Cooper on. CMHA is doing some work. You probably saw in the paper today, Columbus State is looking at building some units. Zach Woodruff, who works there, is partnered with us extensively and is, I think, doing a great job. They've had plans for a long time, and he's really begun to execute them. So affordable housing will continue to be something that we look at. It's definitely a new line of business for us, but I think given the success at Topiary Park, we're encouraged, and the city's been very kind in supporting us, so I think you'll continue to see that.
Brad, this one is for you. Adding residents means adding units. What new strategies or methods are being used in dense infill development or adaptive reuse more attainable?
We're to scrape it all, just knock them down. We've been doing a lot of our developments on urban infill with protecting historic structures. I think there's always been a focus. We have a lot of surface lots downtown, so that infill is first and foremost. I would say, actually, let me flip that. The existing historic vacant structures is the first and foremost issue that we got to tackle. So the office to residential repurposing is first and foremost. Secondary, I would say, is surface lot infill. The great thing about all the apartments that we have right now is they will fill. And it seems like a lot. I know I think it's 1,400 units in the last 18 months or something like that. They will fill. I've never seen a robust market that has new buildings that sit empty. It's just a price point issue. And I think a lot of the developments that, where would we be without Jeff Edwards? I think that's we always say that in our office. It's Edwards Companies, I'm sorry, saying it right. The Edwards Companies has done a phenomenal job downtown. What we're doing is we try to use one of our products to create a different shift in office to residential conversion. And we're doing that with the former Ohio Department of Job and Family Services building. If you Google Columbus Downtown Skyline, it's the white marble building on the right. We call it the Right One, LLC. And what we're doing with it is, it's very expensive to build apartments in existing buildings. It's actually more expensive a lot of times than building new. But to maintain the historic fabric of downtown, could you imagine if we proposed to scrape that building right in the city skyline and kind of unparallel the Supreme Court? It'd be absurd, but it's expensive to build. So what do? Well, we went out and we found existing government programs and we figured out a path to where that'll be the first historic building in the world that we've found where someone's using modular apartments to repurpose it. So we're essentially cutting a bay out of the building, the entire side, and we're going to insert apartments in like a Pez dispenser. And what that does is, if you think about infrastructure, imagine trying to park a construction project on the river, like on the downtown side. It'd be almost impossible. We have 140 parking spaces under the building, and to try to put material and contractors, it would disrupt so much. So we looked at it, and with the city of Columbus, I got to tell you, the customer service side of the building department and development is doing a phenomenal job, where we feel like we can be risk takers as developers and do things like this. So they greeted it with open arms. And later this year, and we're in permitting right now, it's happening. So later this year, you're going to see, we'll have cranes set up, in Q1, Q2 of next year, and you're going to see apartments just getting slid into a building. And it's going to increase, decrease the timeline, decrease the cost. But that's one thing. I think once we prove that out, that's going to be a path that you can take in other buildings downtown.
And if I can add just a comment on that, number one, thank you so much. I know we talk about as a Downtown Residents Association that we cherish our skyline. It's what we love to see in the morning. And so the opportunity to rehab something, I know Livec Towers rehabilitation, there's just a lot of things that are a little bit cost prohibitive. So when people choose to take it on, we all need to cherish that. But I will say the reality of what we need to see is a lot more micro units, a lot more small places to live that can play into the affordability element, because right now it is expensive to build. This is not a dig on a developer trying to build something. It's just a lot of money. And so finding other ways, we need more flats. The number one thing that people ask me about that we don't have quantity of, shameless plug, is one and a half bed, 1.5 bath. Something that is more than a 1 bed, 1 bath without needing to go all the way up and increasing your rent by $600 to $800 a month to get that extra bedroom, but having some workspace. So again, it's just more types. I don't think the owner versus renter part is as much a challenge or a problem in the sense that we're building what works well, but the typology and new approaches like that are really going to be crucial to get us to 40,000.
And Mindy, I want to kind of piggyback off that. You touched on the affordability, which is very important to a lot of folks. Speak about public spaces and even family-friendly amenities. What sort of role do they play in the future of downtown?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So it's interesting because I have just anecdotally had, in the last couple of months, a lot more families come up to me and ask to sort of corral a cohort because they're a little bit disparate, right? So we haven't hit critical mass of families that reside downtown. There's always a chicken or egg conversation. Do we build the child first amenities and then they'll just come? It's a challenge. We have the Commons. We have a beautiful space at the Commons, which is so family friendly. We could do a little more. I think that the number one thing that could be done from a public space perspective, I take that back. The public space perspective is what's working for families. I think what it needs to accompany it is things like small lot homes that have a little bit of green space in the back, right? More neighborhood launch-esque type places to actually motivate folks to stay residing. So actually, I would say the public space has got it locked down.
Okay. And Greg and Mike, this next one is for you guys. Are we doing the right things to ensure that downtown remains a place where artists, students, service workers, and seniors can actually live, not just professionals?
Yeah, I think to the point I was making about the affordable units that are being built, I think there's a lot of that. I think we're trying to create activities along the river, in the park, all over downtown that different groups of people from different ages and walks of life can all use. We've reopened the Scioto Mile Fountain, which has been just a huge success. I think if you go down there on and it's been very hot, so we've had very good business. We put some food trucks there, and we have a Dora, which is the ability to drink alcoholic drinks and walk around. And we need to do more for the river. I think there's more opportunities, and our team's looking very hard at that, along with the city, to determine what can we do to activate it. We had the free kayak day recently, and every time we do that, there's just so many people down on the river that have never experienced it, that love it, that will wait, in some cases, 4 hours to hop on. So we know there's a demand there. We're looking at putting some pickleball courts down, anything to just get people excited to be downtown, that they can walk out if they're staying in a hotel or living there and do all that. So I think we are trying to reach everybody.
Yeah, it's really important that we continue to find ways to draw the people to downtown, whether they're going to live or work. And I know the team that we have at development is really excellent on trying to figure out ways to make sure we can get the jobs and the investment. We can get the infrastructure investment that comes along with it. I'm blessed. I work with colleagues in Department of Public Service who are really focused on how are we moving people around this city and in the downtown. And it's no longer the mindset, and I give a lot of credit to Director Scacco on this, it's no longer a mindset as let's get people into downtown as fast as we can and get them out of downtown as fast as we can. Now it's how are we setting up these streets so people, when they're in downtown, they can shop, they can go to restaurants, they can take advantage of the private sector investment that we're seeing and really driving that. So I'm really bullish on downtown. Greg took all my talking points, so now I'm just tap dancing.
I would like to add for a second that, to exactly your point, we have to acknowledge, I work in the transportation industry by day, and so one of the things that is very prevalent is the speed of cars, right, downtown. Mindy's 2 cents, probably somewhat popular opinion in this room, we shouldn't be building highways down the centers of our downtown. Those are for a great fit for another place. And so right now, the city of Columbus has really reduced the speed limit downtown and is doing a bunch of other things to discourage faster speeds. That takes time. It takes a lot of policy answers in order to fully get there. But I will say, to that point, if we're going to create this livable place that people want to be, it's less about trying to get people there, and it's more about creating a there, creating the space and place people just want to be, build it and they will come, build it well, and they'll come and they'll stay and they'll spend money.
What point I want to make is I spend a lot of time thinking about development across the whole city, but I'm also thinking about, when I'm thinking about a development out at Easton or Polaris or up at Tuttle Crossing, I'm thinking about how does it impact downtown? Because Mayor Ginther said, I don't want a growth strategy that's done in a vacuum. I want a growth strategy that is coordinated with CODA and what they're doing with Link Us. I want a zoning code update that's going to get more housing across the whole community. I want to understand how the growth and the investment the airport authority is making, how does that impact the growth in downtown and throughout the whole region. And so it's really important as we think about downtown, it's a vital part of our overall growth strategy, and what our partners at Morpsey and Experience Columbus and the North Market, what they're all doing to successfully thrive. And that's what we're focused on in development at the City of Columbus.
And Greg, this one is for you. Columbus has a lot of momentum, but also risk. What keeps you up at night when it comes to downtown's future?
Lots of things keep me up at night. It's a tough environment right now. We're working on a lot of projects and developers, and a lot of folks are having a difficult time with the price of money and just the construction costs and all of that. So it's difficult doing all the things that we want to do in the most cost-efficient manner. So that certainly keeps me up at night. And one thing that always comes up is the first thing that I was asked about when we started is safety. I think after COVID, there was a perception that it was going to be difficult to get people to come back downtown because people had gotten used to being home and staying where they lived. And there was, I believe, it was more people who didn't want to come back to the office were saying, well, I don't feel safe coming back, so, you didn't go back. And so we had to really demonstrate that it was very safe. We worked with the city and the Division of Police, and downtown is one of the safest neighborhoods in Columbus. There's certainly probably a higher property crimes, things like that, but in terms of violence and it's very low. But the business community and the mayor asked us to consider a new program, and we started Safer Columbus, where we have identified a bunch of cameras that are existing with large employers like Nationwide, Huntington, the city, ourselves, and so we created it, and we're housed in the old Lazarus building, if you don't know where we're at. There's a center there that's monitored 24/7, and the idea is that if something happens on Gay Street and it's on camera, and you can just access all these cameras of all the people that are participating, and it really gives you real-time data. The police are notified immediately, so it's really provided another tool. It's simply just another tool, but we're very excited about it. We're very happy with it, and knock on wood, we've had a great summer, but yeah, that one definitely keeps me up at night.
And if I can add on to the safety component, I will say there's 2 or 3 questions that downtown residents get all the time, and it just really gets under our skin. And one of those is, do you feel safe? And you're like, no, I choose to spend this much money because I don't. Yeah, I do. One of the things that I found interesting is a bartender recently said to me, I feel like I see a lot more women walking their dog after midnight than I would have ever expected to see. And I like that litmus test, because the reality is, safety is a fact and a feeling. It is always both, and both matter, but neither one is more important. And so I feel as safe as I do in the dark downtown in New Albany, because I'm a woman. I'm gonna put my head on a swivel a little bit at night. So I think it's really good to acknowledge that safety is both a fact and a feeling, and it doesn't matter how much data we have to support that. The feels are there. So ask any of the residents who live downtown, and they'll be like, after they roll their eyes at you, they'll say, yeah, I feel safe. Yeah.
Brad, this one is for you. What's the biggest opportunity that we're not yet taking full advantage of in the city's core?
Oh, that's a good one. I do think that there's going to be a retail resurgence downtown. I think we're starting to get inquiries in from third-party brokers from other states with large national groups. I had a soccer group that puts bubbles on parking garages call me, and I think just you would think that would be absurd, and then you find out what they've done in other major metropolitan areas, and you're like, oh wow, that'd be awesome. And I think we're going to start to see continuance of that. I think when Penn's Mechanical moved in, and that was a big boost downtown, right? Pre-COVID, that was a big deal. Everybody was pumped. That place was packed nonstop. And then when we thought that maybe they were going to move to the peninsula and vacate downtown, I think, a lot of people kind of came to arms and talked to them about it, and they said, you know what, we're going to stick it out. We're going to be here. And I think that was a huge move. It was a huge statement. Having groups like that, those great operational groups that select to move downtown, that's going to continue to create a foothold for entertainment. And I think, there's another thing. A couple years ago, we have a great leader of Kappa, by the way, and Chad Whittington. And he was telling me that, Columbus has never really been a 2-week stay for Broadway. And I think that's a major move. Right now, if you think about it, we're getting stuff. We're getting Hamilton, and we're getting it, but we're not getting the full length of stay that other major cities our size are getting. And a lot of it was like a parking issue and a coordination issue. And then he said, you know what? We're just going to build another venue out of one of our owned assets on 3rd, that church that they're renovating. And he thinks that that's just going to get them over the hump to where now their offering is more robust. I think those moves like that is going to create the live, work, play. I think we've always had work. I was not a fan of work from home. I'll tell you that right now. Just as an office building owner, that was very scary. And as a parking owner, again, who would have thought we'd remove humans from downtown? That was a tough time. But the play component comes hand in hand. And with all these apartments, now you have a 24-hour occupancy, and I think that creates a lot more safety. There's not many dark corners anymore, and I think that we're on the right path to get not just back to where we were, but in a whole different paradigm, you know. And I think it's the Capitol Line project is really going to kind of help solidify that and pull it through.
Well, Brad, if it makes you feel any better, I'm a fan of in-person working as well. I like to see people face to face, so we're on that. Thank you for the panelists. It is CMC's long-standing tradition to take audience questions. We'll move to questions from our live stream and in-person audience in just a few minutes. If you have questions, please make your way to the microphone right there in the back. You see Doug raising his hand. If you're joining us on YouTube, please type in your questions to the chat. But before we go to those audience questions, I do have one more very important question for all of our panelists here. If downtown Columbus had a tagline or a brand, taking it back to this 2040, what would you want it to be? And Greg, we'll start with you and just go on down the line. At 2040, you want to start with Mike? Okay, we'll start with Mike then. Greg doesn't want to do it. You got it?
As the resident marketing professional in the building, I will say the wholly unpopular thing, which is I want it to be created and figured out by the residents and the people who are here. We know, I spent many years working at Experience Columbus, and you know, it doesn't matter how much you tell somebody about your brand, you have to curate the brand instead and let it grow itself. So my big dream for the future of downtown is to have organic names for each of the little pockets, the little spaces. I love that. I remember MKSK did like the Diamond District, or tried to do that because there's one building that said Diamond on it, which I appreciate. Good try. But I like the idea of, and I dream of the day when somebody says, I live downtown, where? And there's an answer outside of just River South. River South has really materialized, but I'd love to see a day when we have like, oh, I live at this specific niche in the pattern, the framework of the downtown.
So 15 years ago, we had a tagline that was, you know, downtown's everyone's neighborhood. Today, you know, as I think about that, that was an aspirational statement. It's not as much as an aspirational statement because, you know, I too live downtown, and I see people from all over our community, Columbus and the region, coming and taking part in the amenities and the activation. So it is becoming everyone's neighborhood. So in 2040, I think that's just going to be a fact of life. Everyone's going to look at downtown not only as a neighborhood for the downtown residents, but for residents throughout our whole region.
I don't know what I would name it, but I think, you know, I was born and raised in Columbus, so I'm older. So I've been here for a while and seen a lot of changes. But, you know, the thing that when I worked for Mayor Ginther, we'd travel and somebody would say, where are you from? And he'd say, Columbus. And they'd go, Ohio? And he'd go, where are you from? Dallas, Texas? And it just pissed him off that, you know, like, what other Columbus would I be talking about? And so, you know, I think Columbus, period. You know, that should be our name, and I think that we should take pride. And Mayor Coleman before him, who had the good privilege of working for as well, you know, he put swagger. You know, you can laugh, and I've certainly made fun of the mayor with him and without him about swagger, but there is something. You want to be a big city. We're the 14th largest city. You want to do it. Own it. Don't apologize. Don't explain it. We're great, and we should lean into that.
Yeah, I think the branding piece for downtown is I like what Mike said. I think that would actually, you know, for everybody is a great way to put it. Unfortunately, like the heart of Ohio, it's like all that's already taken. I think with the Silicon Heartland, I think all that's way too played out. But I do think that, you know, whatever the branding experts come out and say, you know, we're not Cleveland. And that's, you know, and I think if I'm allowed to say I'm a Columbus developer, we're allowed to say it. I think, you know, what we have going downtown here is we have a robust growing population. And I think that that's something to where we've got to touch on it, grow out all of our individual districts. I remember when I think I asked Mark Lundeen, you know, when I did the trolley district, I said, so what makes a district? How do you name it? He's like, I have no idea. I'm going to go check. He went and checked. He came back and he said, I got nothing. I said, well, I'm just going to name it the trolley district. And he's like, okay, sounds great, and that was it. So I think that we probably ought to, focus a little bit more downtown, because we do have some kind of loose names, Red Brick District, Market District, all these other things. I mean, Short North obviously is a huge home run, but I like, coming with one cohesive component for the city's center, and unfortunately we can't use that either. So
let it happen organically. You can't push it. You can't push it. People have to feel it. And any of our organizations can come up with beautiful taglines and beautiful names, but it's going to be the people who live, work, play that create what they call it, right? And we got to do it organically.
All right. We may have already come up with it, organic Columbus. At least we're not Cleveland. How about that? All right, thank you so much to the panelists. Doug Buchanan with CMC is gathering questions from our live stream audience. For those of you here in person, please join Doug in the back with the microphone. Doug, what's the first question?
Rodney, thank you so much. Thank you to today's panelists. Great conversation. If you have a question for today's panelists, please do join us here at the microphone. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can. If you're watching online, type your questions into the chat. We'll also try to get to as many of those as we can in the time that we have left today. Great questions at CMC always have two things in common, right? They can be asked in just a couple of sentences. And what punctuation mark does a question end with? It ends with a question mark. It's always good to remind ourselves of that.
Good morning. My name is Elena Biffle. I represent Keys Investments, but I'm also a board member of the Downtown Residents Association, and Mindy has done a great job representing us today. My question is kind of wrapped up in a statement, which is a lot of times, especially in development, people start to use affordability as a synonym for belonging and inclusion, and those really aren't the same things, right? So just because we move people in a space doesn't mean that they belong. So my question is, how do you get feedback about what those residents, as you're building affordability, how do you get feedback about the things and the amenities that they actually want versus, moss walls and pickleball?
Well, that's a fair question. I think, what's important in the question that you asked is, everybody's looking for the same thing, I think. In downtown, before, I would agree with you, it was more working and it wasn't looking at it. But I think if you look the last 10 years, and Councilmember Bankston has started a program, with us, we do it with them, and it's to get retail, it's to get small minority businesses. We work with landlords that help with rent. The city pays down some of that rent, and so you get a great business like 3 Bites Bakery that's over there on Broad, and they're just doing a fantastic job. I think if you talk to them, they feel very welcome. I think the mistake maybe that we make sometimes is to say affordable housing. We also like to say workforce housing. I think it's an opportunity, I think affordable housing historically has had maybe a negative connotation. I don't think it should. I think we should be very cognizant of that. I think this administration is very cognizant of that, so I think we've worked really hard to do that. The pickleball is something that's going down to Junto, the peninsula, trying to create an exciting thing. That's not something that I would suggest is going to the Y or to some of these other areas. But for the YMCA, for instance, I know Wuda Cooper is talking about having a daycare that's free so that when you're living there, you're getting discounted rent. You can drop your child off in a safe environment, and you can go to work, and you can come home, and it's all right there. And I think those are the types of things we're looking at. It's a very fair question, and I do think that we need to put more focus on it, but I think we've come a long way.
I can add to that and just say that, to Elena's point, we work really hard to create community every day, which sounds so pie in the sky and ideal, but we do look at how do we really create neighborhood in an authentic way that doesn't feel contrived. And so one really good example of ways that is starting to pan out is Downtown Columbus Inc. Actually, we entered in kind of a grant programming with them where they're giving us a few funds to do some things in the community. So we have traditional membership dues. They cover some fun events and some great things, but we don't have a huge bank account to do really big installations. So they help support us in a Pride float, for example, this year, so we could show up as a downtown community in the Pride float or in the Pride parade. So I would say that it's kind of on us as residents, but it's also supported by some of those entities like a DCI who can push that in and give us the momentum we need to make that succeed.
Thank you all. Next question. given that many of the office conversion projects likely involve tax incentives and public subsidies, how do we justify using taxpayer dollars to benefit private developers when working families in underserved neighborhoods still lack infrastructure and services? Should market forces, instead of government intervention, determine downtown's future?
Brad, I'll start and then you can jump in because you're the evil developer. I'm just giving the money away. No, I appreciate the question. The problem is there is a gap in the cost to make these conversions and the revenue that can be generated from what gets built. And we don't exempt the taxes that those properties are currently contributing to the bottom line of our property tax levy agencies. What we do is we abate the improved value. So the developer takes a risk and builds a project. We help lower that risk so that the revenue that they can capture from that project doesn't, because the market's not meeting that demand at that level of revenue. So we're actually, there is no market at this point without these incentives. But for these projects, we wouldn't see this type of investment from the private sector into the community. So I feel pretty strongly about this, that it is a sound investment on the city's part to provide opportunities for people to live so they can get stably housed, they can work, they can contribute. And the revenue that we're foregoing is not lost revenue. It doesn't exist without the project. So we still have the ability to invest in those other communities, and we continue to do that. The mayor announced, and city council by the end of this month is going to approve close to $1 billion capital budget. That is an infrastructure budget. That is investing in our community throughout all of our communities. So, but we need a strong downtown to maintain the kind of that economic engine that downtown has been for the last 50 years.
I think to that point, it's important to note that downtown, I believe I'm correct, is 1% of the city's landmass, okay? But it's 16% of the income tax generated. And the city, nearly 80% of its dollars that are used for all the things that was in the question is generated from the income tax. And so you have to have income tax to get the services. And I don't think anybody is going to stand up and say, hey, we want to give away free money. But it's not, it's to the director's point, it's an investment in the future. It's not free money.
So I don't know if we have enough time to discuss, tax abatements and impacts, but I'll give it for downtown specifically. Construction is the issue for development right now. Even when interest rates were 3.5%, we still didn't build enough. Demand exceeded supply, rent rates continue to go up. So it's a construction issue, and it's not a general contractor issue, it's a subcontractor issue. We just don't have enough trades, so it's hard to build. When you're taking these large vertical buildings that are vacant, they currently are not bringing in money. They're currently not bringing in dollars. They don't just get better, they continue to decay. Once they continue to decay, now you're looking at a demolition project, you're looking at an eyesore. So whenever you're going to do a building downtown, there are typically state and federal programs that are available for conversion. There is historic tax credits. I think we had TMUD awards here for a couple projects downtown. Those are dollars that, when the state's carving out money, even though we're the state capital, a lot of times, they've got to cover the entire state. So Columbus is getting just a portion of it. If we don't have projects, we don't get state dollars. That's just it. So if there's a gap to do a big building, a big impactful building for downtown, the way that the city participates is via tax abatement. Well, what that is that's future dollars generated by the growth in revenue. So what that does is you still have the income tax for all the people that do the work. So if I got to do a big building downtown, it's $40 to $100 million. I think the day of a $15 million downtown project is gone. It's 40 to 100. And if we're bringing in $40 to $50 million of construction, you got to think, every contractor that is working there for more than 4 days consistently is paying municipal income tax to the city of Columbus. So there's dollars that are generated just by movement and just by economic moves, on these development projects. So it's a win, but then what it does at the end is it gives people a place to live, and then that's where they live. Anymore, a lot of people are paying their income tax, where they reside. So that's another big win for Columbus. If you live downtown, you probably work downtown. So I think, all in all, as we go to grow downtown, we're going to have more and more dollars available that the city can utilize or not. These projects wouldn't happen if we didn't do it otherwise.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Jason Jenkins with the City of Columbus. Greg, thank you so much for touching on the small business component that Councilmember Bankston, Office of Development, put together. My question is around intentionality. And so that was a very intentional project to work with small, diverse businesses. Are we doing anything along those same lines, but with a focus around diversity, around inclusion? We have a melting pot of communities way up north on 161, going out west. How are we bringing those communities together downtown, outside of festivals, outside of organizations like the North Market? Are there any other things that we're doing to bring that melting pot into downtown?
Yeah, I think people are coming downtown. Like I said, we have over 200 free events at the Commons, and if you looked on our website and saw the listing of them all, I think you'd see a diverse group of offerings. I think with the Picnic with the Pops, they always pick artists that appeal to everyone. I mean, nobody's going to like every type of music, but I think there's a lot of that. I think the affordable units that we talked about, Director, I think that gets to your question. I think we need to do better. Like I said, when I started in 21, I don't think that was a lens that we were looking through, and I think Mayor Ginther made that clear and made changes and wanted that done. And I think our team has done a really good job of looking at that and trying to expand offerings and trying to give more places to work, live, these programs that you talked about. I know I work with your office when we are doing a project to make sure not only the people that are interacting downtown, but the people that are doing construction projects downtown are representative of the community at large, and work with you and get your guidance and advice on that. I think, downtown is just a microcosm of the country, right? We have a lot of work to do, and particularly now, it's a very difficult time, unfortunately. But that is our charge, that is our goal, and we are open to any suggestions you may have or others. But we need to do more. We can do more, and we will do more.
We have time for one more short question.
Thank you. I'm Kathy Fox with Community Strategy Partners, and I wanted to follow up on Brad's comment about the new arts venue that CAPA is going to create, and the comment about the Broadway series only being a week here. I'd like to hear what each of you think about how to expand the arts in downtown Columbus with our resident companies, money that recirculates in our economy instead of leaving town with a promoter who's bringing something in from out of town. We have music, dance, theater, and visual artists as well, but how do we make downtown more friendly for the artists and artisans who live and work here?
I guess so. One of the things that I noticed recently is I think some of the art exhibits and the art groups moving into some of the retail components on Gay Street and High Street, that gallery hop kind of shifting, I think is a big thing for downtown. I think it's something that may take a year or two to really grab hold, but I mean, when that's popping, I mean, that's really going, and people do travel to go to that. The GCAC, we did their office build out. It's a phenomenal organization. They're getting ready to go through some transition as Tom Katzenmeier is retiring. But I think the amount of money that they have behind them with the ticket tax, I think is going to continue to be able to direct a large amount of dollars. And that's the thing about art infrastructure downtown is it's expensive, but when it's expensive, it's impactful. And I think that we have the best canvas around Central Ohio. And I think that a lot of those moves are going to continue to make downtown a magnet for large scale artwork, large scale promotions.
All right, I wish I had more time to speak with you guys, but I'm getting that rap signal from Doug in the back. So I appreciate you guys again inviting me to be your moderator for this event. Great discussion, very important topic that impacts all of us and our families across Columbus and Central Ohio. So I'll turn things back over to Sophia for the concluding remarks.
So I hope everyone enjoyed today's conversation. What I love about Columbus is, one, that we have vision as a community, but we're also intentionally pragmatic. A comment that really stuck out to me was, Mindy, you said that the downtown core, the name of the downtown, how we talk about it, is going to happen organically. It has to happen from residents. And I think that that's such an important message for all of us to take into consideration, because when we think about what does the future of Columbus look like, how are we going to accomplish our goals, it's not going to happen from individuals who work within institutions. It's going to happen by every single person in this room, every person who's tuning in on live stream, taking action, standing up, participating, and serving our community to help us accomplish these bigger goals. It's going to take all of us. So thank you so much for today's sponsors: Downtown Columbus, the Edwards Company, Marker Construction, MKSK, our presenting sponsor of our live stream for all of those folks tuning in online, the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation, our live stream partner, the Columbus Dispatch, and most importantly, thank you to the Ellis for hosting us every single week. And thank you, our conversations would not be conversations without our great panelists and moderators. So thank you to Greg Davies, Brad DeHaze, Mindy Justice, Michael Stevens, and our host, Ronnie Dunnigan. Let's give them all a round of applause. So I mentioned we do this every week. You know, I say that civic participation and service is not just a spectator sport. It's one that requires participation. And it's great because next week we're going to be talking about sports. Yay! All right, so make plans to join us right here at the Ellis for next week's forum, Navigating a New Era of College Sports, a conversation with OSU's Ross Bajork. Please join us. We're going to be talking about the billion-dollar business of Buckeye athletics. If you are a Buckeye fan, I hope I see you in the room. And if you're a Buckeye fan, I see everybody nodding, right? You're going to be here in the room to talk about sports. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for a wonderful conversation, and have a great afternoon.